I wanted to follow up on the important questions Senator Warren had asked about civilian casualties. Nobody wants civilian casualties, of course. One question that wasn't asked, though, that I think is important, we don't target civilians ever, our military, do we? General McKenzie, General Townsend?
Senator, we do not target civilians.
General Townsend, in your experience?
You're absolutely right.
So we never do
what we
that.
see in Ukraine right now.
Right, but other countries do, correct?
I can only observe what you're seeing in Ukraine.
Ukraine, Syria, perhaps?
Many other places.
ISIS, Al-Qaeda. So we don't do that. It's just important to recognize and say that for the record, and I know that's been your experience and your command. You know, I was in, like a lot of senators, as part of a bipartisan delegation to the Munich Security Conference. I went on to do consultation with allies in NATO and the EU in London, and it was mostly about Ukraine, some Asia-Pacific issues. I was actually quite surprised how literally in every meeting our allies raised with me the Afghanistan withdrawal and how it undermined U.S. credibility and trust, particularly as it related to NATO allies that were also in the country. General, what do you recommend is our best way to regain that credibility? I didn't raise it. It was raised in literally every meeting with me, and it was quite an important experience that I had that, hey, this is still having an impact. What would you say is the best way to reestablish that kind of credibility and trust with our allies, particularly NATO allies?
Senator, so I think there's still a thirst for U.S. leadership. There's certainly a thirst for it in my region where I interact with chiefs of defense daily and have visited literally every one several times since we left Afghanistan. They're taken aback by it. They still believe that the United States remains their partner of choice and, in fact, their preferred choice. Now, NATO is a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but I would tell you that I think the things that we are doing with NATO right now are things that absolutely restore some of that.
Good.
I think from what I see from my perch on the sideline at CENTCOM, looking into what European Command is doing and NATO is doing and this administration is doing, I think they're doing all the right things to reestablish that.
Okay, good. Thank you. I noticed that in your CENTCOM priorities, deter Iran is listed at the top. Is that your #1 priority?
Sir, that is my #1 priority.
And let me talk about, I'm sure you're familiar with this, the Quds Force, General Soleimani, starting in about 2004, 2005, supplied very sophisticated IEDs to the Iraqi Shia militias in Iraq. Over 2,000 American soldiers wounded in actions, over 600 killed in action because of those EFPs. For years, we didn't do much to hold Soleimani, the Quds Force, accountable for this very devastating killing of our best and brightest. I was in a hearing when the chairman, then General Dunford, mentioned that Soleimani in particular may have learned the wrong lesson back then. You could attack Americans with impunity and not pay a price. Do you agree with that? I know you were very familiar with that, and this is prior to, of course, him being killed.
Well, I think he's an object lesson in that you can't attack Americans with impunity.
So you think that, were we able to reestablish some of the deterrence that General Dunford had talked about by killing him when he was looking to kill more American troops?
That contributed to deterrence being reestablished, and I think there was a factor in their calculation. The Iranians have never doubted our capability. Occasionally, they doubt our will.
And do you think that's been reestablished now?
I think yes, but I think as with all things with Iran, it's an extraordinarily complex subject, and I think there is deterrence, but it's what I would call contested deterrence. They still seek to push us out by hurting us, and they will continue to do so.
Let me ask one final question. You were quoted in a New Yorker article in December of 2020 titled "The Looming Threat of a Nuclear Crisis with Iran," where you were quoted as saying that a more immediate threat than the nuclear program is Iran's missiles. Two very quick questions. Did the Iranians target the consulate with this most recent missile attack? on northern Iraq? And would re-entering the JCPOA positively or negatively impact Iranian ballistic missile capability, which you, I think, have rightly called out back in December as a much more immediate threat from them? So 2 questions on that. Were they targeting us?
They were not targeting us.
So we're sure of that?
I am sure of that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And the second question?
Second question is, I think that's a hard question. I think, what you would like to do is, if you execute a JCPOA, you would want to go to limiting other elements of the Iranian portfolio. And that would be a bridge to get to where you're maybe
Like the
talking
missiles.
about ballistic missiles. You're talking about proxy activities. So that would give you an opportunity to try to work that diplomatically.
But should that be part of the agreement?
Senator, I don't believe that the current, it is under the current profile that we're looking right now. I'm saying it could be, if you're successful in negotiating an agreement, it might lead you to an opportunity for further successful negotiations on other issues.
No, but I'm just asking, sorry, Mr. Chairman, in your personal opinion, do you think that threat, which you said is actually more immediate than the nuclear threat, should that be part of any agreement that we're trying to do with them right now? In your personal opinion, I know you're not negotiating it.
Right. I do not believe it is feasible to come to an agreement that incorporates both elements right now. I don't believe it's feasible in the world we live in with the state of our negotiations with Iran. It's feasible to get to both those things at the same time right now.
Thank you. Thank you again, gentlemen.